Coming up today, Korea remains in the icy grip of a severe cold spell. And for passengers stranded on Jeju Island after heavy snow forced the closure of the airport, it's more delay, disruption and disappointment. President Park Geunhye calls for the establishment of a new regional police agency to be set up along part of the inter-Korean border. She says it will provide an extra layer of national security amid the ongoing threat posed by North Korea. First sanctions lifted, Iran's president heads to Europe to drum up business. Korea opens a centre in Seoul to help local firms make moves into the Iranian market. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's Monday on the 25th of January. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us on this very cold day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. And we begin with the Arctic chill that has descended over Korea in recent days and continues to bite hard. Now, most of the country is still bearing the brunt of temperatures well below freezing on this Monday, a day after Seoul shivered through its coldest day in 15 years. Now, Korea isn't the only place suffering. Other parts of Asia and the eastern coast of the United States have been hit with dangerously icy and snowy blasts. EG1 starts us off.
The cold wave watch has continued for an eighth straight day in some parts of the country as Monday's temperatures remain low. According to the nation's weather agency, the Monday morning temperature in Seoul was a bone-chilling minus 14 degrees Celsius, Daegu minus 11, and Busan minus 8. Korea's southern regions also received warnings of heavy snow in the morning, while a record of 130 centimeters of snow piled up in eastern island of Ulleungdo. But the temperatures are forecast to rise throughout the day. Korea isn't the only country in the grips of a severe cold spell. A massive blizzard struck the U.S. East Coast over the weekend, and at least 19 people have died in storm-related accidents. A state of emergency has been declared in 11 states, and about 12,000 flights have been canceled. Washington, D.C. was hit with 60 centimeters of snow, the second highest since 1922. And the federal offices in the capital will be closed on Monday. China is also experiencing a severe cold wave, with some northern provinces reporting seasonal lows of 48 degrees below zero. Shanghai marked a record 35-year low of minus 7 degrees on Sunday, but conditions have eased with highs expected to reach 2 degrees. In Taiwan, the temperature is projected to drop lower than on Sunday to 3 degrees Celsius, which is more than 10 degrees lower than the average for January. According to Taiwan state-run Central News Agency, at least 52 people have died of hypothermia or cardiovascular disease caused by the cold snap. Hong Kong saw its coldest day in nearly 60 years on Sunday as the mercury plunged to 3 degrees Celsius. Temperatures in Korea are forecast to return to seasonal norms from Tuesday. The rest of the world should also feel some respite from icy weather later this week. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now, this blast of winter is causing a lot of problems for those travelling to and from Korea's southern resort island of Jeju. A thick blanket of snow has prompted the cancellation of hundreds of flights, leaving tens of thousands of passengers stranded at the airport. Now, the latest we have is that flights will resume from 3 p.m. this afternoon, so in around 3 hours from now. To see how those passengers are faring, we're going to connect to Hee-jung, news reporter for Jeju's KCTV. So, Hee-jung, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Mark, this is Hee-jung here. I'm happy to be of assistance.
Yes, Hee-jung, we hear that around 90,000 people, including a lot of foreign tourists, Jeju popular of course with Chinese and Japanese tourists, they've been stuck at the airport now for a couple of days, unable to get back home and with nowhere to go. What's the general feeling there, and what is the airport actually doing to make their experience a little less uncomfortable?
Mark, weather experts say that Jeju hasn't seen such unusual heavy snow in the last 32 years. Flight cancellations are not uncommon as they often happen during typhoon season, but it's the first time all runways have been closed off due to snow for an extended period of time. The waiting area at Jeju International Airport is crowded with passengers whose flights were canceled over the weekend. We just received an update at the airport that it will be opening its operations at 12 p.m. and flights are expected to be resuming at 3 p.m. But with possible delay, it will not be enough to accommodate all the passengers that have had their flights delayed since Saturday. Close to 2,000 of these passengers have spent the past 2 nights inside the airport, unable to find any other place to stay. With a shortage of cardboard boxes and food, many have had to sleep through the cold and skip meals. The whole place right now resembles a refugee camp. Currently, life supplies, including water, blankets, and heating mats, are being provided by the Jeju province and the Transport Ministry.
Yeah, we can see on the video while you're talking there, Hee-jung, bottles of water being handed out and blankets, but it must be extremely a difficult time for the people stuck in that airport. Now, as you touched upon there, the flights are due to resume at 3 p.m. Korea time, but there are only so many runways, of course. Jeju Airport is pretty big, but it's not huge. Do you think it's reasonable that it will start at 3 p.m. given the weather there at the moment? And how long before they actually clear this massive backlog of passengers?
Well, though I can't see the airport from our office where we're located, we are located about 5 minutes driving distance from the airport, and the snowfall has stopped, I believe about 15, maybe 20 minutes ago. Even after when flights start opening, the few that do leave Jeju tonight will not be able to accommodate all 90,000 passengers that are eagerly waiting to return home. It should take about 2 days before operations get back to normal. Currently, the Transport Ministry says it will work to resume the situation in a speedy manner as soon as possible.
Well, we certainly hope for the sake of everyone stuck there at Jeju Airport that they can get home as soon as possible and there's no more snow. Well, thank you very much, Hee-jung, for your report. That was our Hee-jung from Jeju's KCTV reporting on the chaos on Jeju after that sustained bout of heavy snow closed the island's only airport. Now, in other non-weather related news, chairing the first meeting of the year with her senior secretaries, President Park Geun-hye has stressed collaboration and understanding to help create more decent jobs for the nation's young people. Citing the umbrella labour union's boycott last week of tripartite negotiations with the government and management, the president said the agreement was a promise to the people that cannot be broken. She also repeated her call for the passage of related labour reform bills pending at the National Assembly. President Park also stressed the need to establish a regional police agency in Northern Gyeonggi-do Province to ease concerns of residents living close to the border following North Korea's 4th nuclear test earlier this month. The National Election Commission has held its first ever policy debate ahead of the April general election with a representative from each of Korea's 3 biggest political parties in attendance. The lawmakers from the ruling Saenuri Party, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, and the minor opposition Justice Party discussed ways on Monday to overcome the economic problems facing the country, along with issues related to labour reform and job creation. Now, hosted by the election watchdog, the lawmakers were able to verify their party's policy pledges. The next nationally televised debate will take place on February 26th on the issue of social welfare. Now, China's latest growth figures have further prompted concerns over slowing global demand here in Korea, where exports are the country's traditional growth engine. Our Hwang Ji-ae sat down with World Bank Vice President for East Asia and Pacific region to talk about the global conditions Korea faces.
After experiencing a rapid growth for more than a decade, now China is going through a painful slowdown recently, and this is coming from the government focusing more on domestic consumption over government investment. What's your take on the transition in China?
Well, this has been a transition that we anticipated, we have expected it. If you are growing 6.9%, and even the bank is expecting in this year about 6.7%, you are talking about a substantial increase of an economy. Think of the 6.9, that is about $700 billion, so that's quite substantive. I think we need to see in the transition phase which sectors are going to be more challenged, which are going to be growing. And what our advice has been is to focus on that.
Exports to China account for a quarter of Korea's total exports. How would this transition affect Korea?
Well, first of all, indeed, it is 25%. It's important. Let's also add that Korea has been very successful to have 75% elsewhere, including, for example, ASEAN, Japan, and the rest of the world. I would argue that the 25% is also an opportunity. First, you have a very strong presence in the Chinese market. Secondly, that transformation means also China will have a rapidly growing middle class. So what the interesting transition is, you will have some producers losing out, but there will be new demands in other goods. Electronics is going to be very important, but also all the technologies that are able to adjust quickly to new market trends. Korea has been successful over the last decades to adapt quickly to new trends. It's not about, unquote, predicting which is the next successful product, an iPhone or whatever. But I think what will be important is, does an economy and do firms have the capability of adjusting?
So what do you see in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of changes in the regional dynamics?
I think what is very important is that the center of economic gravity is increasingly moving to East Asia. There are major powers in the region, and Korea is, as also a very strong economic power, could be actually very good as an integrator. Also, Korea could make a major contribution given its own successful development trajectory. The relevant comparator for Korea is not comparing your growth performance with other developing countries. It is with more advanced countries. That is the league in which you are right now. And this year the aspirations are to be in the order of 3%. That would make Korea one of the fastest growing advanced economies in the world. And there, I think in relative terms, you have been doing well.
It's very interesting to hear that we are in the level of advanced economies. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Geunhye asking the questions there. Now, European aircraft maker Airbus is set to be the first beneficiary of the lifting of sanctions under Iran's landmark nuclear pact with global powers. According to Tehran's transport minister on Sunday, Iran plans to buy 114 Airbus planes by March to revitalize its aging fleet. The purchase is expected to be signed during President Hassan Rouhani's visit to Paris on Wednesday during his European tour, which will be the first by an Iranian president in 17 years. The minister said Tehran is also interested in buying aircraft from US plane maker Boeing. Iran emerged from years of economic isolation when world powers lifted sanctions against it early this month in return for Tehran complying with a deal to curb its nuclear ambitions. And Korea has opened a centre in downtown Seoul to support trade and investment with Iran as the country emerges from sanctions and international isolation. Officials from the Finance and Trade Ministries, Korea Exim Bank and other related institutions gathered on Monday to open the centre that aims to resolve problems companies or ordinary people face in the process of making investments or doing trade with Iran. The Finance Ministry expects the centre to make it much easier for companies to get all-round information before they had to call or visit separate institutions one at a time. Now, speaking at the opening ceremony, Korea's Vice Finance Minister emphasised that the lifting of sanctions provides a great opportunity for the Korean economy. Now, it's an unfortunate fact that Korea can be a really tough place for a lot of elderly people. Despite being one of the wealthiest countries in Asia, Korea has the highest elderly poverty rate in the OECD. Making matters worse, a new study shows that most old people struggling to make ends meet also suffer from so-called multidimensional poverty. Park Ji-won has the details.
Nearly 7 out of 10 Korean senior citizens end up suffering from multiple layers of poverty. According to a recent study of nearly 3,000 senior citizens surveyed, 67.3% of them, as of 2013, were defined as living below the poverty line in more than 2 criteria, such as income, housing, and health. More than half of the elderly citizens were considered poor in terms of income, earning less than half of the nation's median income. 5 out of 10 senior citizens also suffer from more than 2 chronic diseases, depression, or have difficulty with physical activities. Nearly half of the senior citizens also have poor social participation rate based on their regular group activities. However, compared to figures in 2011, the overall numbers have improved. Research fellow Hwang Nam-hee, who led the study, says the reasons behind the improvement are not yet clear and could be the topic of future studies. She emphasized that the goal of her study was to show that more policies should be devised for helping senior citizens from a social aspect.
Most senior welfare policies centre around strengthening income, such as providing subsidies or basic pension. However, as this study shows, more policy interest should be given to senior citizens' depression rate or social participation rate.
The study was published in the latest edition of Pension Forum, published by the National Pension Research Institute. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, Brazil is suffering from an outbreak of the Zika virus, becoming just the latest problem to hit South America's first Olympics. According to the organisers of Rio 2016, Olympic venues in Rio de Janeiro will become inspected daily during the Games to prevent the spread of the mosquito-borne virus. The condition is linked to a rare birth defect and can also cause paralysis. The local organising committee stressed that the mosquito population will be smaller during the Games in August, which is Brazil's dry season. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has advised pregnant women to reconsider travelling to Brazil and 21 other countries with these outbreaks. The Zika virus was first detected in Brazil late last year, and researchers suspect it may have been spread to the nation during the 2014 World Cup. And those are the stories we have been following on this Monday afternoon in Seoul. We'll be back with our next scheduled newscast at 6 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.